right. Well, again, thank you all for being here. Good morning. If this is your first time, we're really excited you're here. My name is Jake. I am the pastor here at Aldea. And yeah, we're thrilled you're here. If you've never joined us before, you can stop by our welcome table on the way out for just a gift to say thank you for being here. And you already got a chance to meet Michael through music and meditation. But I grew up playing your songs in my youth group, and I don't think everyone here has had that exact same experience, watching you kind of throughout your journey. So maybe for folks who are just meeting you today, what are some things that you just might share to give a little bit of an overview of what the last 2 to 3 decades of your life have been like? So,
just real quick. So I grew up in church. My dad was a pastor. I started doing Christian music as my early career, just at the same time as I was having an existential crisis and not knowing what I believed. So that was all quite a mess. Not a great career move, apparently, turns out, to not know if you believe in God as a Christian musician. But then ended up kind of writing music about that process. I've kind of written the whole time, so it's interesting. Even at shows now, I'll be like, there's people that think I'm in one stage, the Christian music stage, and then there was kind of like I don't believe any of this stage. And it was like questioning everything. And then whatever stage I'm in now is really about integrating the whole thing. I felt a lot of freedom as I left more constrictive religious spaces for a long time. Found freedom within my own body and in my own life. But I've found in that I'm not just a solitary life. The life that I am is this shared life. And so how do we have shared life and shared spiritual life without resorting to the things that shut off our minds and our hearts and our bodies and shut off groups from each other, has been a really big question for me over the last decade. It's like, how do we create spaces and practices and communities that are not built on us versus them, but that are spaces where we can access our shared spiritual life together. And so anytime I get to come to a place like this where you're actually boots on the ground doing this is really inspiring to me. And it's what we're doing tonight with Mystic Hymnal. And so that's been a big, huge part of my work, is how do we remind each other who we are under all of our stories and share that space without, some of the things that I and so many people that I know needed to leave in the more traditional containers.
Clearly, there's a lot that we could talk about this morning, and I know for me, I was overwhelmed with thinking of all the things that I wanted to talk with Michael about. So I thought I would let something else decide. So I brought a jar of questions or a jar of topics, and I thought we'll just see what happens. And what this means is that you're going to get an entirely different experience than first service. So that's pretty exciting. So here we go. Let's just see what we got here. All right. Okay. So. You talked. You said in a recent podcast that this work that you're doing with Mystic Hymnal and just in general the work that you've been doing in the world and how it's evolved, that in some ways there's this difference between maybe how you would describe your own spirituality as something that exists more in this space beyond words, and then the different words and language that you use in the different spaces that you're going to.
Yeah, language and spirituality is such an interesting thing to me. One of my favorite spiritual texts is, "The Tao that can be spoken is not the true Tao." I think that's really beautiful and it's like to the point. But what I've discovered as I needed some time away from the spiritual language that I grew up with, the Christian language, to kind of let it simmer and heal and not be triggered by any, use of some of those words. But after healing and after being away for a while, coming back and kind of rediscovering the potential use of language and spirituality as like shared meaning and rituals and stuff, more as technologies than identity forming belief systems, suddenly they're like potentially really beautiful. and powerful. And like when language can become like an invitation into the moment together, an invitation into shared presence. That's what I love about poetry. Like poetry to me is like language that is alive in a way that sometimes our language is just so dead. It's based on binaries. It's based on dualisms. And we're like up, down, left, right. And it's always based on an opposite. But sometimes a poet or language can be used in a way that kind of breaks the traditional like boxes of our minds and allows us to see the livingness of life. And so to me, spirituality in its height is that's what it is. It's like these even doctrines and these things that we say, these words, a word like God, or like whatever, these words that don't have really clearly defined nouns, like we can be like chair, rug, carpet. We can all kind of know what we're talking about. If I say God, what are we talking about? No, we don't really know. I like that there's language like that we have to go like, what are we talking about? And it invites a mystery. It invites an engagement into the moment if you're really going to use it well. So for me, language is not something I need so much for myself at this point to be in God. I used to need more words to kind of try to make sense but to me, language now is very much about us and how we remind each other and how we invite each other and how we express to each other what is life like here. And when we can use language as a living connection and as a living invitation, then I'm interested in religion again, actually.
I want one of those like the blower things or the cash and all that. Anyway, all right. Oh, Ram Dass. So we're all big fans of Ram Dass here at Aldea, and you have some Ram Dass experiences that have been really formative for you. If you'd be willing to just share a little bit about that, I think it's really powerful to hear.
Yeah, 2017, I went to a retreat with Ram Dass. I was a big Ram Dass actually I would attribute a lot of my coming back to any Christian language whatsoever actually to Ram Dass, because it was after I had been away from church a lot, and he would say all these things about Jesus, and I was like, I guess Jesus did say that, didn't he? But I kind of heard it from a new angle, and so he was helpful in starting to heal and integrate some of where I came from for me, and also he helped me get freed from a lot of the ego baggage of my own name and my own story. I liked that he had come from a really like totally different life at Harvard and as a professor and this academic guy, Richard Alpert, and then by kind of leaving his name, it was a real chapter switch for him. And so he actually helped me leave the chapter of what Michael Gungor was to me. It wasn't just my name. It was like my brand. It was my job in these weird ways. And so he called me Vishnu Das in this beautiful moment that we shared. And for a while, some of my friends and stuff helped me kind of unbundle from Michael Gungor by using that name sometimes. And so that was a real gift for a few years there to be able to kind of get some distance from Michael Gungor. What is that? It's just a sound, okay? And there's a bunch of stories that my brain has associated with that sound, but it's not me. And so that was a beautiful gift. But I still, when he passed, people around me were like, I'm so sorry, because they knew he was like really important to me and really beautiful part of my life. But in a funny way, he didn't go anywhere. It was like I knew it wasn't a personal relationship that I had with him so much as like we shared presence in this really profound way. And that thing or that energy, whatever he really is, it didn't go anywhere. And so I still am so grateful for that. And yeah, it's whatever that thing is that we dropped into and that I saw in his eyes and that I felt unlock, like that doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah. It's one of my favorite things that he says is that, when you lose someone you love, the physical person might be gone, but the space of love that was opened up between you, that doesn't go anywhere. It's beautiful. This you wrote a really profound book called This. And I read it right when it came out. So that would have been, what, like 8 years ago, maybe 7 years ago? And then I started just rereading it recently, knowing you were coming. And I find it, in some ways, like it resonates stronger even now than when I was first reading it. It just, so I recommend, you can, available on all booksellers, I would imagine, This by Michael Gungor, Vishnu Das. But I was curious for you, looking back now, and it's, obviously there's so many things you're covering in that book, but, now some time has passed, and I'm just curious, what impact has writing, such a, in many ways, you're expressing your own, it's a memoir, but it's also a lot of really big ideas about consciousness as well. What's it like now for you to reflect on that book and kind of maybe the trajectory it took you on?
I haven't read it since it came out, so I kind of like try to remember it. Sometimes people will be like you say in this, I'm like, I wrote that? Interesting. So I don't, I'm writing a new book right now, and I'm interested how things have shifted. I know some things have shifted in some ways, but there's something for me about, like, as a songwriter and a creator of lots of media of different types, I don't know why me having, like, writing something or putting it in a song is kind of therapeutic, or is like, now I can see it, although, like, it kind of makes sense of, or puts it into something that I kind of, it's processing in itself. So I've found that at big chapters of my life, there's usually like an album that gets made from it, or a book, or something. So that was definitely a huge chapter. This was marking that book to me was like this years of seeking, and it was always about, I had mystical experiences where God was so real, love was all that was, but it was in the aftermath of those moments and those experiences, it was always like I was trying to get it again, and it always felt like it was out there somehow, rather than like more present than I could possibly imagine. This is the closest word that I could find. Like, it's not that. It's literally like it's so close. It's this, and so that death of seeking all of that outside of me was what this was written out of.
Yeah, and then, as you talk about the role of language, I love how you use such a simple, ubiquitous word to actually describe that which is already right here. So it kind of does end that seeking. The Liturgist, this podcast project, I think it's more than a podcast, events, music, all kinds of things around something called The Liturgist that Michael has been driving for probably, 15 years maybe? So it's a place where you were doing a lot of public processing of your own journey. What was that like, and how did that sort of inform where you ended up going, because you were able to speak on the things that you were working through in a really public format, and the community that was built around that?
Yeah, at the time, I didn't know of anywhere else to have those conversations. Like, there was no safe space that I had access to in my life where we could be like, is God even real? And so we just decided to put it on the internet, which, in hopes that maybe other people, I guess, would be able to find a safe space, because I found a friend. I found a friend that could have these conversations, and we were having all those conversations behind closed doors, and I was like, should we just put this out for everybody? Because, like, these feel like important conversations. And thankfully, there was a lot of people that found a lot of solace and safety in that. It was a funny thing. We would have, the Liturgist was a very big but often kind of secretive fan base. I've met more than one person who's been like, I got fired for listening to you, which was, I'm sorry. But also a lot of good stories, like, and sometimes being fired was a good story for them, actually. But it was kind of like, I listened to you guys, because a lot of churches didn't love the questions. but yeah, a beautiful community started around that. But that's actually where I feel like I'm at now, is kind of in response to the liturgists. What we did, I think a lot of people were able to leave constrictive environments and like, okay, I don't have to stay in that belief system, in that church, and that whatever. And we got a lot of freedom by leaving, but then you had a lot of people just kind of like wandering around outside the camp, lonely. And so my work in the last 5 years especially, I think, has been really focused on, I mean, the liturgist was always kind of, we wanted to find a way to find each other, but I'm really more specifically trying to figure out how to craft experiences, spaces that bring people together that can't come back into the spaces that are built on us versus them, that can't use words and beliefs anymore to destroy our own souls, but would want to be together and recognize the shared life that we do have, and that by remaining segmented, that something is lost. So how do we do that? And yeah, so the liturgist has been a beautiful source of even why I've felt that need, because it's like I've seen so many people are like, okay, now what do we do?
Yeah, and I think through that, one of the things that work communicated, at least to me, was that, you know, really asking, maybe there is something redeemable and rescuable about the traditions and the format, really. And so I think in a lot of ways what we're doing here is we're taking this, you know, fresh, evolving, expanded view of spirituality, but in a format and a container that still is familiar and still works with some of those forms. And a lot of the conversations that you had on the liturgist really kind of helped me process that. So thank you. All right, what do we got? Oh, non-duality. No, you talk a lot about non-duality in work in various forms, and you know, non-duality is tricky because it's like, how do you talk about something that inherently is the unspeakable? So, what's it like for you going around to different places, going, "Hey, non-duality"? Meanwhile, it's, you know, so.
Hey, non-duality. Okay. That should be my like bio and Instagram or something. Hey, non-duality. So non-duality.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next, I think maybe the only way we can actually talk about it, I like even in the word itself, it is just a negation of duality, because you can't actually make a positive statement about it. It's like, you know how that's left and that's right? This is not that. And so all the divisions, it's just like it's kind of keeping an eye on the mind in a way, to me, when we're talking about non-duality. Is like, because what the mind does is it's always breaking things into a binary, good and bad, you and me, up and down. That's how language is built. That's how our minds work. It's like a computer that builds everything out of ones and zeros. So this duality, but it's a useful tool as well. I'm glad that I can say go left at the light, and we understand what that means. It's very useful. We couldn't have relationships. We couldn't have a society without duality, without dualisms. So they're not bad. It's not even the duality of creator and creation. I'm finding more value in, actually, like having some sort of formation of God that is bigger than whatever I feel like I am. There's some kind of shape to reality that I feel like that's a helpful construct. But if we don't see when we're constructing, what tends to happen is we get lost in this dream world of ours that's actually ones and zeros. Like, we get lost in a reality that is really just not the fullness of reality. And it has all sorts of, that's where all of our mental suffering, I believe, comes from, is where we get lost in this, because in the mental world, I create this version of myself, and I have this desire, I want to be good, I want to be loved. I want to be in control of my circumstances. I want to feel good and not bad. And all these dualities lead me, now I'm constantly living in a place of lack because this mental model is never quite it, actually. So my lived reality, I'm never quite living up to whatever this mental model of what I think I am is. And so I'm always in lack, or I'm always not quite home. And when we live in the world of those dualities, that's where we think we actually are, our lives become more and more hellish. So non-duality is it's an invitation to me back into the direct life of here and now. That you can't actually, when you're fully here and now, you're not moving even a millisecond into the future or the past, you're just here, there's nothing really to say about it because you're in it. As soon as you have to stand back from it to say something about it. And when you're in it completely, I hope we all have moments. I hope all humans have at least moments, even if it's just like in the middle of an orgasm or just some moment where it's not me standing apart from life, judging it, thinking about it, trying to have control over it, but just in it. Just completely absorbed into the fullness of a moment. Sometimes it's like in a piece of music or watching a sunset or like the first bite of a crazy good meal. You're like, you just lose yourself. That's non-duality. This is non-duality. It's remembering that the constructs of the mind that we're constantly using to kind of like navigate reality is not something other than the mind. Because that's what ends up happening. We live in this dream world.
Yeah. And now you have your homework for possible ways to experience non-duality. Communities and the future of gathering or church. You've certainly spent a lot of your work traveling to different places, maybe spaces that more resemble Aldea, maybe spaces that more are traditional. And then even in the last month or so, you've been touring, and this is your last tour stop for at least this leg. So what has been your experience in seeing different expressions of community, and maybe where do you think things might be headed, and where do you hope things would go in terms of how we gather, how we create spiritual containers?
I'm reading this book right now by Alan Watts that I don't know how I missed till now because I've read a lot of Alan Watts, but it's called Behold the Spirit. But he's talking about, it was when he was a priest that he wrote this book. And he's using all Christian language to talk about what Alan Watts is always talking about, which is this. But I really, there's one metaphor that he used that I like, made me laugh hard and made me like, I really appreciate it. He's talking about how like the human experience of making music. And you could watch, if a monkey watched humans making music, what they might be able to like imitate would be like, okay, they're banging on things and they're blowing through tubes and they're rubbing things together. And monkeys might be able to imitate that, and sit there and do all of that. But there would be something about music itself that they would not be accessing. The internal experience of creating music. There'd be some aspect of that they're just imitating the outside of it, right? And he's making the argument that that's what so much religion in the world is. That all of the doctrine of the incarnation, all this stuff is like, it came from a living, internal, spiritual, mystical revelation. And then it gets turned into ideas about history or moral codes or abstractions about the future and the past, as opposed to poetry about the living now. And I think the potential for what religion can be is largely untapped in our world. I think there's always been a stream of it through the desert mothers and fathers and the Celts and different, saints and mystics who have found the livingness in the shell. So another analogy that he uses in that book is like, it's like a fruit in a shell, and most of us, most of the religious people are not accessing the fruit; they're just playing with the shell. And he said even like the Protestant Reformation was like, we broke the shell, but rather than getting into the fruit, they took the shell pieces and went into the corner and glued together a new shell. And I think there is fruit. I know there is fruit because I am eating it. And I'm eating it via I can look back and be like, like the words of Jesus, the teachings of Jesus, and it came through for me. It took a lot of pain, and I had to leave it for a while, but there's fruit in there. I can feel it. I know it's here. But it's not, it's just we're like looking at it all upside down. Again, the technology thing, it's like if we use these words as an invitation inward, as opposed to somebody out there to believe in or something, like, no, you have it all upside down. Like turn the whole thing upside down. And that's what Jesus was saying the whole time. That you're not hearing me. You don't have ears. If you want to live, you got to die. And everyone's like, what? It's just like all upside down. So I think and hope that the fruit, because I think we're seeing a lot of destruction of the shell. And a lot of people have left the shell, but we're still hungry for the fruit. And I think and hope that there's a number of us that have discovered the fruit that can now, knowing what it is, use the shell to deliver the fruit in new ways, and in old ways, but with the aliveness of it, like the mystical interior. Without that, religion is just completely useless to me, other than building empire. But from the mystical center, religion can be a way of sharing life and sharing the mystical reality together.
Yeah. And speaking of that fruit in the shell and really what's been at the heart of these traditions, the wine and the wineskin, all that, I think the work that you're doing right now, and specifically why you are here, which is Mystic Hymnal, I think that's so much of what you're describing, and you are in the process of doing it and trying to bring that into the world. So, for those of you who are here, and really I encourage you to come back tonight at 7 for the event, but kind of let us know what to expect and how is that part of getting at that fruit.
Yeah. So I think communal singing, I love, as a musician, I love music, but I felt something particularly about communal singing, the fact that we're expressing something while also receiving. It's a really potential powerful kind of loop to get in, almost, where it's like breath, almost, like literally like the in and out, and when we do that together. But there's something that happens in our education and in our civilization where we start thinking about singing in similar ways that we kind of lose the ability to play sometimes as an adult. It becomes abstract, and I've never heard a little kid say, I don't know how to sing, but I've heard lots of adults say that. And there's something really fundamental about being in a body as a human and singing together. Forget if you sing the right notes, that's all abstract. But like literally letting our voices buzz together. There's something really powerful about it. And we see it even on like physiological levels. Like they've measured heartbeats when people sing together and they like start syncing up. Our brains are all lighting up in all kinds of ways when we're doing music together. Our nervous systems are co-regulating. But I think it creates this experience, this potential experience when we come authentically to it, that provides a really potentially powerful mystical space to share, where our hearts are open, and a lot of us I know have, a lot of people that I've met, especially through the liturgists and stuff, get a little nervous around group singing activities and stuff because it is so powerful. It often gets used for propaganda, to sneak in beliefs and ideas through the side door while our defenses are down. And so sometimes we get around like any emotionality or, singing like, what are you trying to do here to me? And I'm okay with that edge, actually. That's part of what we're doing in Mystic Hymnal. It's like, can we actually find that edge? Because that's where healing is possible. Because we're not trying to sneak in any beliefs. You get through it and you're like, you feel something. It's like, wait, nobody told me to believe anything. Nobody shut down my body. We're actually like valuing your body, valuing your feelings, valuing all. It's like, oh, okay. So it's not the emotion that was the problem. It's not my heart being open or my voice being open that was the problem. It was the little messages that got sneaked in and taken advantage of while I was in a vulnerable state. And so this has been a beautiful tour on a number of levels. Different people experience it from different places. Some people are just having fun, and it's a playful way to share presence. And there's been people that, like there was a guy the other night that hadn't sung anything for 15 years, ever. And he was like, just his voice coming online was like really meaningful to him. There's been people that came that like, I haven't set foot in any kind of church or religious space or anything for years, and I'm terrified just to be here. But then by being in a space where like, oh, again, nobody tried to get me to believe anything. Nobody told me I was going to hell. And they're like, oh, they just, something healed and opened. So yeah, the music is an excuse to be together and to love what is in each other, and something we create together. So